Thanks so much for that introduction. All right, and because it's 5 minutes and I can do a hour talk better than I can do a 5-minute talk, I'm going to dive right in, if this thing will, there we go. So you can't watch TV in the United States without somebody coming on and asking you about your colon. Or get on the internet and find news articles about how probiotics cure disease, improve mental health, make babies stronger, or even save the rainforest. And so the question is, probiotics have been around as a concept for over a century. So why all of a sudden are now they such a hot topic and you can't otherwise get away from them? And the answer is, it's only really been in the last decade that we've had the tools to really be able to dig down and understand who's in the gut or in the soil or in these complex microbial ecologies and figure out what they're doing, who's there, and begin to understand that really subtle changes in who's in the microbiome can have profound impact on the animal's health or the plant's health or whatever it happens to be. And really, when people started really figuring out how many different species are in the gut, we now have an appreciation that is essentially it's about 40 to 1. There are about 40 bacterial genes in the animal for every animal gene that's actually in the animal. So in terms of the genetic power, far more is in the microbiome that's actually in the animal itself. And I like to joke with graduate students and say, if that brings up sort of the philosophical point of who's the host and who's the symbiont, if there's 10 to 100 times more of them than there are us. So because of this sort of discovery, biomedicine especially is really who's responsible for the fact that, we're not going to go back? All right, so biomedicine is really who's responsible for why Jamie Lee Curtis and everybody's on there telling you about her colon. But in animal ag, we've been doing this for far longer, at least decades, if not better part of a century. Whether it's feeding things to feed the bugs, feeding good bugs themselves, or both, we've been doing this in animal ag forever. Probably humans included, the animal that we know the most about microbiome and animal health is probably the dairy cow. Specifically in the rumen, people have known for over a century how different changes in the microbiome affect pH, affect the microenvironment, affect digestion, lead to animal health changes, lead to growth, milk production, even milk quality. We've known this for a long time. But now all of a sudden, our medical friends have decided they've discovered something. Nothing's like Steve Jobs never really invented anything. He just sort of built on it. Biomedicine a lot of times likes to reappropriate things from agriculture and claim that they discovered it. This has been around for a while in cattle. To a lesser extent, we know there's lots of evidence that changes in the microbiome in chickens there's a really good correlation between who's in the chicken's gut versus the growth outcomes of poultry. Even when we don't do it on purpose, nature finds a way. Animals will figure out ways to modify their microbiome one way or the other. Nature abhors a vacuum. But most of this, and the studies involved, have been sort of correlative. We do an experiment, especially in human medicine. It's one group we feed Crisco, one group we feed rice cakes, and then we get a Nature paper out of the fact that the microbiome's different. Really where the field needs to go moving forward is not just this correlation, but causation. Can we start to do this on purpose? Can we do some of the cool things in animals and in humans that AgBio is trying to do in plants? And so what my group is interested in doing is trying to take that next step. How do we go from understanding the correlation, we did this in a dietary treatment and we changed the microbiome X or Y, to really start to be able to build the infrastructure, the knowledge base, to be able to start to do this on purpose. And so we start off typically, like everybody else does, with some sort of probiotic or dietary treatment to try and push the microbiome in a particular direction, and then find out, okay, what species are specifically reproducibly changing, and then can we start to correlate that with actual phenotypic changes in the animal? And we look in both locally in the gut itself, looking for changes in digestive enzymes, changes in architecture of the tissue, changes in expression of, in my interest from an infectious disease standpoint, changes in immune function and immune gene expression, but also systemically. And we've got data going back several years that changes in the microbiome actually affect the way the animal partitions energy within the animal. So different organ systems are getting different levels of ATP and energy based on changes in the microbiome. And so trying to understand how that actually happens, and right now there's a soluble factor, and we're trying to sort of track it down, sort of classical biochemistry, leads us to the, next, maybe? Oh, there we go. So then the next logical question is it really the taxa Or is it the biochemistry? Do I really have to have that specific lactobacillus to get the phenotype? Or do I have to have some bug that makes a certain level of benzoate? And how do we otherwise tease apart what's really the thing we should be looking for? Is it the organism itself? Or is it the constellation of genes that organism brings along with it? And anything either genetically related or maybe even something phylogenetically distinct but has the same biochemical pathways can get us the same phenotypic effect in the animal. And so we're looking at how do we correlate the, I'm on it, how do we look at the changes in the biome and the organisms that are there, and then how does that change in kind with the biochemical pathways that are also there and map those two up to actually the phenotypic differences that we're seeing in the animal. All right, so from an infectious disease standpoint, I'm primarily interested in the immune response. But probiotics, microbiome is bigger than the antibiotics, or bigger than just the disease response, and they've got the power to be, or they've got the potential to be way more powerful than just antibiotics alone. From a disease perspective, what I want is the immune response to be the attack dog that we need it to be, but then to turn into man's best friend and curl up on the sofa with you and want to take a nap when we don't need it. Because essentially from an energy standpoint and food animals specifically, we don't have the same health outcomes or health outcome goals as humans do. If we did, then, well, McDonald's may have the same health goals that we have in food animals. We want the animal to grow quickly, grow efficiently, be productive, be efficient, fit into the sort of the market paradigms of what people are willing to pay. So we need to get the immune system to fight disease, but then to shut itself off as quickly as possible so that extra energy can go to growth and not go to defense. So to be able to switch between these two becomes highly important in terms of a food-animal perspective. But again, probiotics, the microbiome is also involved in growth, development, neurodevelopment, energy. Essentially, there hasn't really been an organ system that people haven't found a correlation between the microbiome and its function within an animal. So, but we really don't know what buttons to push or which levers to pull to really turn those things on or turn them off as we might need them, either for humans or for animals. So real quick, I'm going to blow through this in the interest of time. Nobody does any of this kind of work on their own. So all the collaborators, both at State and Chapel Hill, as well as the really talented technicians and postdocs, I want to call out two people in particular. Ann Ballou is a senior PhD student in my lab, and Rebecca Hughes is a postdoc in my lab, and both of them, I'm sort of singling them out. They're finishing soon. They're interested in jobs in ag biotech and in the park, getting out of academia. So if anybody's interested in two really talented people, here's their contact info, or contact me. I'd be more than happy to otherwise set you guys up, hopefully find them a job. And with that, thank you.